The plasma round hit 3 inches from Kayla's head, and Marcus Reeve didn't think. He moved. His hand closed around her wrist as the second shot vaporized the ceremonial pillar behind them. She was lighter than he expected, alien physiology, all elegant bone structure, and iridescent skin that glowed faint blue under the corridor emergency lights. He yanked her through the doorway as the third shot punched through her honor guard's chest plate. "Move," Marcus said. Not a request. She stared at him with those triple iris eyes, storm gray and silver, pupils contracting in shock. Her crown, some delicate lattice of living crystal, sat crooked on her head. Behind them, boots hammered against stone. "You are employed by the maintenance union," Marcus interrupted, already scanning the hallway. "Which means I know this palace better than your assassins do." He released her wrist and broke into a run. After a moment's hesitation, she followed. The Vulcan Queen moved with surprising speed despite the ceremonial robes. Marcus led her through service corridors that hadn't seen royalty in centuries, narrow passages built for drones and cleaning staff. Behind them, voices shouted in clipped Vulcan. 3, maybe 4 pursuers. Professional. The shots had been too precise for amateurs. "The throne room," Kayla said, breathing hard. "The guard is 3 minutes away," Marcus said. "You'll be dead in 2. He stopped at an intersection, pressed his palm against the wall panel. His maintenance override code was 6 months expired, but the palace systems ran on software older than most of the staff. The panel blinked green. "Here." The waste processing access tunnel smelled like recycled air and industrial solvent. Kayla's nose ridges flared in disgust, but she crawled through without complaint. Marcus followed, sealing the hatch behind them. The magnetic lock wouldn't hold long against military-grade cutters, but it would by seconds. Seconds mattered. They emerged in the lower service levels, near the geothermal vents that powered the palace. The heat hit like a wall, making the air shimmer. Marcus pulled off his maintenance jacket and wrapped it around Kayla's shoulders, covering the luminescent patterns on her skin that marked her as royalty. "Why are you helping me?" Her voice was steadier now, but her hands trembled slightly. "Shock, probably. Adrenaline crash." Marcus didn't answer. He was watching the access door, counting seconds in his head. 20. 30. The door exploded inward at 42, and 3 figures in tactical armor poured through. He grabbed Kayla and dove behind a cooling unit as plasma fire scorched the air where they'd been standing. The assassins spread out with practiced efficiency, cutting off escape routes. Marcus's hand found the maintenance wrench on his belt, useless against plasma rifles, but better than nothing. "Maintenance worker," one of the assassins called out an accented galactic standard. "Walk away. This isn't your concern." Marcus stayed silent. His eyes tracked their positions, calculating angles and cover. The middle one moved with slight favor to his left leg. Old injury. The one on the right held her rifle too tight. Nervous. The third one, their leader, moved like water. "We don't want human blood on this," the leader continued. "Just give us the queen." Kayla's hand gripped Marcus's arm. Her skin was cold despite the heat. "Go," she whispered. "I command you." Marcus looked at her. At 17, she was barely past childhood by Vulcan standards, thrust into power by her father's sudden death 3 months ago. The news feeds had called her the youngest queen in 5 centuries. They'd called her unprepared. Looking at her now, with her chin lifted in defiance despite the fear in her eyes, Marcus saw only a kid who didn't deserve to die in a maintenance tunnel. "Commands don't mean much down here," he said, and threw the wrench. It wasn't a good throw. It wasn't meant to be. The wrench clanged off a pipe near the nervous one, and, as she flinched, Marcus was already moving. He hit the cooling unit's emergency release, and 2,000 gallons of superheated steam exploded into the corridor. He grabbed Kayla and ran through the whiteout chaos, her hand in his, both of them blind. His free hand traced the wall, counting pipes by touch, 7, 8, 9, and then, he was yanking open a maintenance hatch and shoving her through. They fell 12 feet into the thermoregulation pool. The water was cold, chemically treated, and deep. Marcus surfaced first, pulling Kayla up beside him. She gasped and coughed, her crown lost somewhere in the fall. "Breathe," he said. "Slow." Above them, the assassins shouted orders. Boots on metal. They had minutes, maybe less. Marcus pulled Kayla toward the drainage tunnel at the pool's edge. It was barely 3 feet wide, filled with rushing water that led to the palace's outer filtration system. Not designed for people. Definitely not designed for queens. "If you can't swim," he started. "I can swim," Kayla interrupted. Her voice was firm now, steady. "Lead." They dove under together, and the current grabbed them like a giant's fist. Marcus's shoulder slammed against the tunnel wall hard enough to leave him seeing stars. He kept hold of Kayla's hand as they tumbled through absolute darkness. The water was deafening, filling his ears and nose. His lungs burned. Then, they were falling again, a brief moment of weightlessness before they crashed into the filtration bay. Marcus pulled them both to the surface, gasping. Around them, industrial filters churned and hummed. Emergency lights cast everything in red. Kayla was shaking, cold, shock, or both. Marcus pulled her toward the maintenance ladder, his own hands unsteady. They'd made it. Against all probability, they'd actually made it. "The guard," Kayla started. "We'll be here soon," Marcus said, helping her climb. "The alarm system's finally caught up. Listen." Distant sirens wailed through the palace. Boots running. Orders shouted in Velkin. The machinery of royal security grinding into motion, too late to prevent the assassination but in time to interrupt it. They reached the upper platform just as the filtration bay doors burst open and royal guards flooded in, weapons raised. Kayla stepped forward, soaked and shivering but somehow still regal, and identified herself with a string of formal Velkin that Marcus didn't fully understand. The guard captain approached, his expression shocked and furious in equal measure. He looked at Kayla, then at Marcus, then back at Kayla. His hand moved to his sidearm. "This human," he began, "saved my life," Kayla finished. She was still shaking, but her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "He is under my personal protection. Is that understood, Captain?" The captain's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty." They wrapped Kayla in a thermal blanket and led her away, surrounded by a dozen guards. She looked back once at Marcus, those strange triple iris eyes unreadable. Then, she was gone, and Marcus was left standing in the filtration bay with his soaked clothes and a growing sense that his quiet life on Velker 5 was about to become very complicated. He was right, but not in the way he expected. The interrogation lasted 6 hours. They asked about the assassination attempt, his background, his maintenance access codes, his reasons for being in that corridor. Marcus answered honestly because lies would have been detected, and because the truth was boring enough to be believable. He'd been checking a faulty environmental control panel. He'd seen the Queen in danger. He'd reacted. They verified his story against palace records and security footage. They ran biometric scans and background checks. They found exactly what he'd known they would find: Marcus Reeve, human, age 32, employed by the Palace Maintenance Union for 4 years. No criminal record. No political affiliations. No reason to be interesting. Except he'd saved the Queen's life, which made him extremely interesting to everyone in the palace. They released him after midnight with a warning to remain available for further questioning. Marcus nodded and left, walking through palace corridors that felt different now. Guards watched him. Staff whispered as he passed. He'd become visible, and visibility was dangerous. He returned to his quarters in the maintenance sector, a small room with a bed, a desk, and a window overlooking the palace gardens. Everything he owned fit in 2 bags. He'd learned long ago to travel light. Marcus sat on the bed and stared at his hands. They were steady now, but he could still feel the weight of Kayla's wrist in his grip, the jolt of plasma fire passing inches from his head. Muscle memory from a life he'd walked away from. Reflexes that should have dulled after 8 years of exile but apparently hadn't. Someone knocked on his door. Marcus didn't move. At this hour, there were limited possibilities, and none of them were good. The knock came again, softer this time. Polite. That ruled out palace security. They didn't knock politely. He opened the door. Kayla stood in his doorway, wrapped in a simple cloak over civilian clothes. No crown. No guards. Just a teenage queen who'd apparently walked through the palace alone in the middle of the night. That's incredibly stupid, Marcus said. I know. She smiled, and it transformed her face from regal to young. May I come in? Marcus stepped aside. She entered and looked around the sparse room with open curiosity. Up close, out of crisis, he could see the details he'd missed before. The way her skin patterns shifted color with her mood, currently a soft lavender that suggested calm curiosity. The delicate gills along her neck that fluttered with each breath. She was alien in ways that still fascinated him after 4 years on Velka 5. I wanted to thank you properly, Kayla said. Away from the court. Away from protocol. She pulled something from beneath her cloak, a small crystal pendant on a silver chain. This belonged to my mother. It's all I have left of her. Marcus recognized the royal heirloom when he saw one. I can't accept that. You saved my life. I did my job. Anyone would have, but they didn't, Kayla interrupted. Her eyes fixed on his, intense. My honor guard froze. The palace security was too slow. You, a human maintenance worker with no combat training, according to your records, you pulled me through an assassination attempt that killed 3 trained soldiers. So either you're the luckiest man in the galaxy, or your records are incomplete. Marcus said nothing. The silence stretched between them. I won't ask who you were before, Kayla continued quietly. I won't order an investigation. But I want you to know that I see you, Marcus Reeve. And I owe you a debt that can't be repaid with jewelry or titles. She placed the pendant on his desk. If you ever need anything at all, you need only ask. I need to be left alone, Marcus said. Kayla's smile turned sad. That, I'm afraid, is the one thing I can't give you. The court won't allow it. You've become part of my story now, whether either of us wants it or not. She moved toward the door, paused. The assassination attempt wasn't random, you know. There are factions in the court who believe I'm too young to rule. Today won't be the last attempt on my life. Then you need better guards. I need allies I can trust. She looked back at him. Think about it. After she left, Marcus sat in the darkness for a long time, staring at the crystal pendant. It caught the moonlight and refracted it into 1,000 colors, beautiful and dangerous. Like everything else in this palace. Like Kayla herself. He should leave. Pack his bags, disappear into the human sectors of the galaxy where Velkan politics couldn't reach him. He'd done it before, could do it again. 8 years ago, he'd walked away from everything, his rank, his unit, his name, to escape the weight of command and the ghosts of decisions that killed good people. He'd chosen invisibility, chosen peace. But he could still feel the assassin's plasma round passing near his head. Could still see Kayla's eyes, wide with fear and trust. Some instincts ran deeper than exile. Marcus picked up the pendant and hung it around his neck. He'd stay, at least for a while. Just long enough to make sure she was safe. Then, he'd vanish again, return to the blessed anonymity of maintenance work and quiet corners. That was the plan. The universe, as usual, had other ideas. The next morning, Palace security found the 3 assassins dead in a safe house near the spaceport. Professional execution. Single shots. The investigation traced their employer to a minor noble house with ties to the royal council. Arrests followed. Trials. Executions. The court politics churned and reconfigured, and through it all, Marcus kept his head down and did his work. But Kayla didn't forget. She visited his quarters twice more over the following weeks, always alone, always after midnight. They talked About nothing important, or maybe everything important. Her fears for the kingdom. His carefully edited past. The weight of responsibilities either of them had asked for. She was brilliant and funny and far too young to carry the burden she'd inherited. Marcus found himself looking forward to her visits despite knowing better. Found himself caring, which was dangerous. 3 months after the assassination attempt, Kayla summoned him to the throne room. Official this time, during public court hours. Marcus cleaned up as best he could and presented himself, aware of every eye tracking his progress across the polished floor. Kayla sat on the throne in full regalia, looking every inch the queen. Her expression was formal, distant. Marcus bowed, not too deep, not too shallow. The human ambassador had coached him on proper protocol. Marcus Reeve, Kayla said, her voice carrying through the chamber. You have served this palace with distinction and honor. It is the crown's pleasure to offer you a position within the royal guard, with full rank and benefits. The court murmured. Marcus's stomach dropped. Your Majesty is too generous, he said carefully. But I must respectfully decline. I'm a maintenance worker, not a soldier. The crown does not make offers lightly, Kayla replied. Nor does it accept refusal without reason. State your objection. This was a trap. Accept the position and become forever entangled in palace politics and security details. Refuse publicly and insult the queen. Either way, his quiet life was over. Marcus met her eyes and saw the apology there. She knew what she was doing to him. She hated it. But she was backed into a corner by court politics and needed him anyway. I have no formal military training, Marcus said. It was technically true. His real training had happened off the books, in black operations that didn't officially exist. I wouldn't know how to serve. Then you will learn, Kayla said. Captain Theron will personally oversee your training. You begin tomorrow. It wasn't a request. Marcus bowed again and retreated, feeling the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders like chains. That night, Kayla came to his quarters one last time. I'm sorry, she said without preamble. The council insisted. After you saved my life, they couldn't ignore you. This was the compromise, make you official, bring you into the system where they can watch you. I know, Marcus said. I'll release you from this. Just give me time to, I'll do it, Marcus interrupted. He'd made his decision hours ago, somewhere between the throne room and his quarters. Some fights you couldn't walk away from, no matter how hard you tried. 6 months. Long enough to train new guards and establish better security protocols. Then I'm gone. Kayla nodded. Relief and sorrow mixed in her expression. 6 months. I promise. She kept that promise in her way. Marcus trained under Captain Theron, a grizzled veteran who saw through his no training claim within the first sparring session but asked no uncomfortable questions. He learned Vulcan combat forms and palace security procedures. He became part of Kayla's inner guard, standing watch during public appearances and court sessions. He also quietly revolutionized the palace security system, identifying weaknesses that had allowed the first assassination attempt. New protocols, better vetting procedures, redundant communication systems. The changes saved Kayla's life twice more over those 6 months, once from poison in her food, once from a sniper at a public ceremony. The court noticed. Kayla's political position strengthened as the failed attempts piled up. Marcus became simultaneously famous and invisible, the human guard who'd saved the queen, but who never spoke at court functions and avoided publicity like poison. The 6 months became 8, then 10. Every time Marcus prepared to leave, something happened. Another threat. Another crisis. Kayla never asked him to stay, but she didn't have to. He could see it in her eyes during security briefings, in the set of her shoulders during tense council meetings. She was still too young, still too alone, still carrying weight that should have been shared. Finally, after 14 months, the palace was as secure as Marcus could make it. The guard was trained. The protocols were solid. The political situation had stabilized enough that Kayla could sleep without fear of midnight assassination. It was time. He submitted his resignation quietly, through official channels. No drama. No public announcement. Just a maintenance worker deciding to move on. The captain accepted it without comment, though his expression suggested he understood more than he said. Marcus packed his 2 bags and booked passage on a transport leaving for the human colonies. He didn't say goodbye to Kayla. That would have been harder than leaving, and they'd both known from the beginning that this was temporary. She had a kingdom to rule. He had ghosts to outrun. Some debts couldn't be repaid, only accepted. The night before his departure, he found the crystal pendant on his desk with a note in Kayla's handwriting. You gave me time. I can't ask for more. But I'll remember. Always. Kay. Marcus left the pendant on the desk and walked away. Some gifts were too heavy to carry. He vanished into the human sectors, taking contract security work on frontier colonies where nobody asked questions and credentials didn't matter. He moved every few months, never settling, never looking back. The skills he tried to bury came back easily, too easily. But, at least now, he was saving miners from equipment failures and colonists from wildlife, not politicians from each other. The years passed. 2, 3, 5. Marcus heard about Velker 5 occasionally through newsfeed snippets. Queen Kayla had married, strengthening political alliances. She'd navigated a trade dispute that nearly sparked a system war. She'd become the leader everyone had hoped she would be. He was happy for her, in a distant way. She'd survived. She'd thrived. His debt was paid. Then, one day, on a dusty mining colony 3 systems from anywhere important, someone said his name. Marcus turned from the bar where he'd been drinking cheap whiskey and, pretending to be interested in the local sports match on the view screen. The voice had been female, cultured, speaking Galactic Standard with a Vulcan accent. She stood in the doorway of the rough establishment looking completely out of place, elegant civilian clothes, skin patterns shifting through complex colors he'd learned to read years ago, triple iris eyes scanning the room until they locked on his face. Kayla was older now. 23 instead of 17. No longer a frightened girl but a queen who'd earned her crown through survived assassinations and political victories. She looked tired. Determined. And she'd somehow found him on a colony so remote it didn't even have a proper spaceport. Marcus Reeve, she said again. Not a question. A statement of found fact. Every instinct screamed at Marcus to run. Instead, he set down his drink and waited while she crossed the bar toward him. The other patrons, miners, traders, and various frontier types, watched with open curiosity. A Vulcan noble in this place was as rare as snow and vacuum. Your Majesty, Marcus said quietly. You're a long way from the palace. 5 years, Kayla replied, sliding onto the stool beside him. Up close, he could see new lines around her eyes, marks of stress and responsibility. 5 years I've been searching. Do you know how difficult you are to find when you don't want to be found? It's a skill. One of many you never mentioned. She ordered water from the bartender with perfect composure despite the stares. I need your help. You have an entire military at your disposal. An intelligence network. A royal guard that I personally trained. You don't need me. I need someone I can trust, Kayla said. Her skin pattern shifted to deep blue, urgency, worry. Someone outside the system. Someone who won't have divided loyalties. My loyalty is to being left alone. Kayla pulled a data chip from her pocket and placed it on the bar between them. 3 months ago, a ship vanished near the border, a civilian transport carrying mineral survey data. 2 months ago, another ship. Then, 3 more in the following weeks. Pirates, we thought initially. But the ships aren't being salvaged. No ransom demands. They're just gone. And yesterday, I learned that the last ship was carrying my daughter. The word hung in the air between them. Daughter. Marcus looked at her, really looked. The wedding ring on her finger. The bone-deep exhaustion. The fear she was working so hard to hide. You have a child. Lyra. She's 4. Kayla's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. She was supposed to be on a secure diplomatic transport to the Summer Palace. Someone altered the flight plans, rerouted her to a civilian ship. That ship disappeared 6 hours after departure. No distress signal. No debris. Just gone, like the others. You think it's connected to the earlier disappearances. I know it is. Someone inside my own government planned this. Someone with access to royal schedules and security protocols. Kayla's eyes met his. Someone I trusted. I can't use official channels to investigate because I don't know who's compromised. The Royal Guard, the intelligence services, any of them could be involved. I need someone outside the system. Someone with skills that don't appear on any official record. I need you. Marcus stared at the data chip. He'd spent 5 years building a quiet life, burying the soldier he'd been. The commander who'd led Black Ops missions into places that officially didn't exist. The man who'd made impossible decisions and lived with the consequences. He'd thought those days were over. I can't help you, he said. Can't or won't? Does it matter? Kayla was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft but fierce. You told me once that you saved me because it was the right thing to do. Not for reward or recognition. Just because it was right. She stood, leaving the data chip on the bar. My daughter is 4 years old, Marcus. She likes stories about brave knights and explorer ships. She has her father's laugh and my mother's eyes. And somewhere out there, she's terrified and alone, and I can't save her because I don't know who to trust. She headed for the door, paused. If the man who saved me 5 years ago still exists, he'll do the right thing. If not, she shrugged. Then I'll keep searching until I find someone who will. She left. The bar's ambient noise slowly resumed, conversations, clinking glasses, the viewscreen's commentary. Marcus sat motionless, staring at the data chip. He thought about a frightened 17-year-old queen in a maintenance tunnel, trusting a stranger with her life. He thought about midnight visits and political maneuvers and a promise of freedom he'd finally claimed. He thought about a little girl who liked stories about brave knights, scared and alone in the dark. Marcus picked up the data chip and followed Kayla out into the dusty street. She was standing by a rental transport, head bowed, shoulders tight. She looked up as he approached, hope and fear warring in her expression. One condition, Marcus said. Anything. When this is over, when we find your daughter, I disappear again. Completely. You use whatever royal authority you have to erase me from every database and record. I become a ghost. A story you tell your daughter about a helpful stranger, nothing more. Kayla nodded. Done. Then, let's find Lyra. Marcus pulled open the transport door. And when we do, you're going to burn down whatever organization took her. No mercy. No political considerations. Just consequences. For the first time since entering the bar, Kayla smiled, cold and sharp and absolutely royal. I like that plan. They left the colony within the hour, boarding Kayla's private ship, a sleek diplomatic vessel with hidden military-grade engines and weapons that definitely weren't standard. The crew was small, just 3 people Kayla vouched for personally. Marcus didn't trust them yet, but he trusted Kayla's judgment. The data chip contained everything Kayla's private investigation had uncovered. 5 ships vanished over 3 months. All civilian transports operating near the border zones. No pattern to the cargoes, minerals, agricultural supplies, diplomatic personnel. But there was a pattern in the timing and locations, subtle enough to miss if you weren't looking for it. Someone's testing the detection systems, Marcus said, studying the star charts. Each disappearance pushed a little deeper into monitored space, measuring response times and search patterns. They were building a map of your security infrastructure. In preparation for taking Lyra, Kayla said quietly. Yes. Marcus pulled up the last ship's flight plan. This route was changed 3 hours before departure. That means someone with real-time access to royal schedules. Someone physically in the palace. I've suspected for weeks. But I can't act without proof, and any investigation I launch officially will alert whoever's responsible. Marcus nodded. This was why she needed him, someone outside the official system who could move without leaving traces. The ships are disappearing, not being destroyed. That means there's a facility somewhere. Something large enough to hide 5 vessels and their passengers. I've had deep space scans of the border region. Nothing. Because you're scanning for stations and bases. Marcus zoomed in on an asteroid cluster near the disappearance sites. What about natural cover? Asteroid fields, nebulas, dead star systems where sensor echoes make detection difficult? Kayla leaned closer, studying the map. The Cat-10 cluster. 300 asteroids with high metal content that scatter scanning beams. We avoid it for exactly that reason. Perfect place to hide something you don't want found. Marcus marked 3 locations within the cluster. We start here. Low-profile scan, passive sensors only. If someone's out there, we don't want to announce our arrival. The ship altered course, heading for the Cat-10 cluster at sublight speed. It would take 6 hours to reach the outer asteroids, 6 hours of waiting and planning and not thinking about a 4-year-old girl alone in the dark. Kayla stayed in the command center, tracking every sensor reading with intensity that suggested she hadn't slept properly in days. Probably hadn't. Marcus recognized the look, the desperate focus that came from having everything you cared about at stake. Tell me about her, Marcus said. Kayla glanced up, surprised. Lyra? You said she likes stories. What else? A soft smile touched Kayla's face. She's fearless. Climbs everything, asks 1,000 questions, argues with her tutors about proper protocol. The smile faded. She's so young, Marcus. Too young to understand why someone would take her. And she trusts people. I've tried to teach her caution, but she just sees the good in everyone. Kids are like that. It's not a weakness. It is if someone exploits it. Then, we make sure she doesn't learn that lesson the hard way. Marcus pointed to the sensor display. We're coming up on the first search grid. Kill all non-essential systems. Passive scan only. The ship went dark and quiet, drifting through the asteroid field like debris. Sensors swept the area in slow, careful passes. Nothing on the first grid. Or the second. But on the third scan, Marcus caught something, a faint thermal signature buried in an asteroid shadow. Too regular to be natural. Too small to be a ship. There, he said. Zoom in. The sensors refined their focus. The thermal signature resolved into a complex structure carved into the asteroid itself, a hidden facility with multiple chambers and what looked like docking berths. And power signatures that suggested active systems. Life support. Kayla breathed. They're alive. Don't get ahead of yourself. We don't know who's there yet. But Marcus felt his own hope rising. If this was the base, if Lyra was inside. A proximity alarm blinked on the console. Another ship, approaching from deeper in the asteroid field. Military configuration, but no identifying markers. Pirates or private security, operating without transponder codes. They've spotted us, the pilot said tightly. Can we outrun them? Kayla asked. Not at sublight. And if we jump to FTL, we leave the area, and lose Lyra, Kayla finished. Then we fight. Against military-grade weapons with a diplomatic ship? Marcus shook his head. We need another option. The approaching vessel launched a warning shot, plasma fire that burned past their bow. Not meant to hit, just to intimidate. Standard pirate tactics. They wanted the ship intact for salvage. Marcus studied the asteroids around them, calculating trajectories and blast radiuses. Dangerous, but possible. How good is your pilot? The best, Kayla said. Then tell them to take us through that debris field. Dense pattern, maximum evasion. That'll tear the ship apart if we clip a rock, so don't clip a rock. Marcus pulled up weapons systems. The diplomatic ship had token defenses, light plasma cannons, point defense lasers. Nothing that would penetrate military armor. But maybe enough for what he had in mind. The pilot took them into the densest part of the asteroid field at speeds that made the hull groan. The pursuing ship followed, firing steadily. Most shots missed, hitting asteroids and creating bursts of vaporized rock. But some hit, rattling the shields. Marcus waited, tracking the enemy's position. They were getting cocky, closing the distance. Good. Target that asteroid. The one with the high iron content. That won't do anything to their shields, just do it. The pilot fired. The plasma cannon struck the asteroid at a specific point Marcus had calculated, where tectonic stress and mineral composition would create maximum instability. The asteroid didn't explode, it fragmented, breaking into hundreds of pieces along natural fault lines. And the pursuing ship, at high speed, flew straight into the expanding debris field. Alarms shrieked on their console as the enemy vessel's shields overloaded under the barrage of high-velocity rock fragments. One shard, a chunk of iron the size of a transport, punched through the compromised shields and tore open the ship's engine section. Atmosphere vented. The ship tumbled dead. Get us to that facility before they send backup, Marcus ordered. They docked at the hidden base 20 minutes later, breaching the airlock with cutting torches. Marcus went in first, plasma rifle ready. The interior was quiet, corridors carved from asteroid rock, reinforced with prefab panels. Industrial lighting. Recycled air that smelled of ozone and unwashed bodies. They found the prisoners in the third chamber, 53 people crammed into a space meant for 20. Men, women, children. All civilians from the missing ships. They looked up with a mixture of hope and fear as Marcus and Kayla entered. A small figure pushed through the crowd, tiny, determined, with iridescent skin patterns that shifted through rainbow colors. She had her mother's eyes and her father's determined chin. "Mommy?" Lyra said uncertainly. Kayla dropped to her knees. Her daughter ran into her arms, and the queen who'd held herself together through 5 years of political warfare and assassination attempts and desperate searches finally broke, sobbing as she held her child. Around them, the other prisoners watched with understanding, some crying themselves, others simply relieved that at least one family had reunited. Marcus stood guard at the doorway, giving them space. His hands were steady on the rifle. His eyes were not. They evacuated the facility quickly, loading the prisoners onto Kayla's ship and 2 shuttles they'd found in the docking bay. Marcus rigged the base's power core to overload, no evidence left behind, no trail to follow. The explosion would look like a mining accident, just another casualty of illegal asteroid operations. On the flight back to Velker 5, Marcus compiled the data they'd recovered, personnel logs, communication records, financial transactions. Everything they need to identify the conspiracy within Kayla's government. Names appeared that made Kayla's expression go cold and hard. High-ranking officials. Military officers. Even a member of the Royal Council. They were going to ransom her, Kayla said, reading the files. Hold her hostage to force policy changes. Trade concessions. Military restrictions. Her hands clenched. They were going to use my daughter as a political pawn. Now you know who they are, Marcus said. What you do with that information is your choice. Kayla looked at him. What would you do? I'd burn it all down. But I'm not a queen. You have to consider the political implications, the diplomatic. I'm done considering political implications, Kayla interrupted. Her voice was steel wrapped in ice. They took my child. They traumatized 53 people, including 7 other children. They're done. She was as good as her word. Within 24 hours of returning to Velker 5, arrest warrants were issued. The conspiracy ran deep. 12 officials, including a Royal Council member and 2 military commanders. All of them were detained by guards personally loyal to Kayla. Trials were swift, evidence overwhelming. Executions followed. The court politics exploded, but Kayla weathered it with the same determination she'd shown at 17. She'd learned much in 5 years: how to use fear as a tool, how to turn enemies against each other, how to make examples that ensured no one would dare target her family again. She was ruthless and brilliant, and absolutely terrifying when protecting what she loved. Marcus watched it all from a distance, staying long enough to ensure the security protocols were updated and the new guard captain was properly trained. His job was done. Time to disappear again, as promised. He found Kayla in the palace gardens on his last night, sitting beneath a crystal tree that glowed softly in the darkness. Lyra was asleep in her arms, curled against her mother with complete trust. "Thank you," Kayla said quietly. "For everything." Again. "You would have found her eventually. But not in time. You know that as well as I do." She looked down at Lyra's sleeping face. "She asks about you. The brave knight who saved her. She wants to thank you properly. Tell her it was just a story. A helpful stranger who happened to be there. That's what you want? To be forgotten?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I want to be nobody again. No weight. No responsibility. Just peace. You've earned it." Kayla shifted carefully, not wanting to wake her daughter. "My people have scrubbed the records as promised. Marcus Reeve no longer exists in any official database. The man who saved me twice is now officially a ghost." "Thank you? Will you come back if I need you again?" Marcus smiled sadly. "You won't need me. You never really did. You just needed time to become who you were meant to be. And you've done that." Kayla didn't argue, though her expression suggested she disagreed. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the crystal trees glow and listening to Lyra's soft breathing. Then, Marcus stood and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the garden and then, beyond, into the wider galaxy where nobody knew his name or his history. He took contract work on frontier worlds, always moving, never settling. Sometimes he heard news from Velker 5, Queen Kayla navigating trade disputes, hosting diplomatic summits, raising her daughter to be strong and wise and kind. She was everything a queen should be, everything she'd become in the years since a frightened teenager had run through maintenance tunnels with a stranger's hand in hers. Marcus was happy for her, in his distant way. His debt was paid twice over now. He'd saved her life, then saved her daughter's. The universe was balanced. He could disappear with a clean conscience. But late at night, in the quiet moments between jobs and planets and the endless movement that defined his life, Marcus would sometimes touch the crystal pendant he still wore beneath his shirt, the one Kayla had given him a lifetime ago, the one he'd left behind but somehow still carried. And he would wonder if peace was something you found or something you built, and whether he'd ever have the courage to stop running long enough to find out. The galaxy was vast and full of people who needed saving. Marcus Reeve, or whatever name he wore now, would keep saving them, one crisis at a time, always moving, always alone. A ghost with a debt that somehow never quite felt paid, a debt that perhaps was never meant to be. But sometimes, just sometimes, he would look up at the stars and imagine a little girl with rainbow skin patterns telling stories about brave knights to her own children someday. And in those moments Marcus would smile, knowing that some debts were worth carrying forever.